You know what's funny about getting fired? I saw it coming 3 weeks before it happened. My phone buzzed during lunch, and there it was, a company email sent to the wrong recipient. That's when I knew I was screwed. I'm Andrew Collins, 49 years old, and I'd been working at Dataflow Systems for 15 years. Senior software engineer, they called me, the guy who built their core security platform that every client depended on. Andrew, after 15 years with Dataflow Systems, we're restructuring your position, Bradley Walsh announced, sitting across from me in the small conference room. He's 34, our CEO for the past 2 years, and he had that tone young executives use when they think they're delivering bad news professionally. Patricia Martinez from HR sat next to him, both wearing those carefully practiced expressions you see in corporate training videos. I nodded calmly, already knowing what was coming. I understand, I said, keeping my voice steady. The relief that crossed their faces was obvious. They'd clearly expected anger, maybe some pleading from a 49-year-old engineer getting pushed out by the latest modernization initiative. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning for this moment since that misdirected email landed in my inbox. The company is moving in a new direction, Patricia added, sliding a manila folder across the polished table. Your contributions have been valuable, but we're consolidating the engineering division under the product development team. Inside that folder would be the standard package, 2 weeks for every year of service, health coverage for 90 days, and some career counseling resources I'd never use. 30 weeks of severance. Not bad, but not the point. We'd like you to clean out your desk by Friday, Bradley continued, gaining confidence from my apparent acceptance. We'll need your key card, company laptop, and phone before you leave. Your team will be notified this afternoon. My team. 5 solid engineers I'd personally recruited and trained over the years. Carlos Rivera, my lead developer. Jennifer Hayes, our security specialist. The same people who helped me develop the SecureLink authentication platform that powered Dataflow's flagship enterprise software used by thousands of companies across the country. But here's what Bradley didn't understand, and this is where it gets interesting. 3 months earlier, I'd discovered that Dataflow's legal team had never filed the patent application for my SecureLink platform. When I asked about it, they claimed it was an oversight and assured me they'd handle it immediately. Something about their response felt off, so I dug deeper. That's when I found the internal strategy memo outlining plans to claim the platform as company-developed technology without specific inventor attribution. They wanted to push me out before securing the patent, knowing that intellectual property developed by employees typically belongs to the company. What Dataflow didn't know was that I'd been working on significant improvements to the platform during my own time, using my personal equipment at home. Those enhancements, which boosted security efficiency by 23%, weren't covered by my employment agreement since I developed them outside company hours using my own resources. 8 months ago, long before that misdirected email, I'd quietly filed for a patent under my own name, fully documented with timestamps and development logs showing the work was completed on evenings and weekends using my personal server. I'd even hired a top IP attorney through a contact of mine. Is there anything else? I asked, standing from my chair. Bradley and Patricia exchanged glances, clearly thrown by my composure. That's all for now, Bradley said. Thank you for keeping this professional. As I walked back to my office, I pulled out my personal phone and sent a quick text. It's happening. Friday is my last day. The response came immediately. Perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize everything. I smiled, looking at the calendar on my desk. Today was Wednesday. Friday, I'd walk out of Dataflow for the last time. Monday would be very interesting. That evening, I met Richard Pearson at Antonio's, an upscale restaurant across town from Dataflow's headquarters. As CEO of TechCore Solutions, Dataflow's biggest competitor, Richard understood the importance of discretion. He'd reserved a private booth in the back, away from curious eyes. They actually went through with it, Richard said, shaking his head after we ordered. I thought Bradley might reconsider when he realized what he was losing. Bradley never understood what I actually built, I replied, sipping my coffee. He saw the user interface, the marketing potential, but the underlying security architecture, that was just technical stuff to him. Richard nodded. His loss is our gain. All the paperwork is ready. He slid a folder across the table. As soon as you sign, TechCore officially acquires exclusive licensing rights to your patent. The press release goes out Monday morning announcing you as our new Chief Technology Officer. I reviewed the documents carefully, though I'd already studied every detail over the past few weeks. A $550,000 signing bonus, substantial equity in TechCore, and ongoing royalties from all products using my platform. Not the $1.8 million some Silicon Valley companies throw around, but solid compensation for a 49-year-old engineer with a proven track record. What do you think Bradley's reaction will be when he sees the announcement? Richard asked. I'm more concerned about my team, I admitted. They don't deserve to get caught in this mess. Richard smiled. Already handled. We have positions for all 5 of them if they're interested. Senior roles with 30% raises. Perfect. I signed the final page and closed the folder. In one move, I'd secured my future, protected my team, and ensured my work would get the recognition it deserved. To new beginnings, Richard said, raising his glass. And to knowing your own value, I added. The real fun would start Monday. Thursday and Friday passed in a blur of exit interviews and goodbye conversations. I kept my professional demeanor throughout, even as rumors spread through the office. Administrative assistants gave me those sympathetic looks in the hallways. Junior developers approached me awkwardly, asking for LinkedIn recommendations before I left. The funny thing was, I actually enjoyed documenting everything for the transition. Every project, every password, every process that kept Dataflow's systems running. I was thorough, maybe too thorough. Dataflow would soon discover just how much institutional knowledge was walking out the door with me. My decision to leave comprehensive transition notes wasn't kindness, though. It was evidence that I'd acted in good faith while the company had not. You're really going all out with the documentation, Carlos Rivera commented, watching me update yet another technical manual. Carlos had been my lead developer for 3 years. Solid guy who actually understood the architecture we'd built. Just being professional, I replied with a smile he didn't quite understand. During my final exit interview Friday afternoon, Patricia went through her standard checklist with mechanical efficiency. You understand that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains Dataflow's property, she stated, pushing a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Of course, I replied pleasantly. Anything developed within the scope of my employment, using company resources, during company time. I emphasized those qualifiers slightly, but Patricia was too busy checking boxes to notice the distinction. And you confirm you have no copies of proprietary company information? I've taken nothing that belongs to Dataflow, I said truthfully. The patent was mine after all. As I packed my personal items, family photos, conference badges from 15 years of industry events, the coffee mug my team gave me last Christmas, Bradley stopped by my office. He leaned casually against the doorframe, trying to look relaxed. Just wanted to make sure everything's clear for your departure, he said, watching me place items into a cardboard box. Crystal clear, I replied, carefully wrapping a small innovation award I'd received for the very platform now at the center of my plans. The irony wasn't lost on me. You know, Andrew, these restructuring decisions are never personal, Bradley continued, using that tone CEOs practice in the mirror. The company needs to move in a more dynamic direction. I looked up, meeting his gaze directly. I understand completely. Business is business. Something in my tone made him pause. For just a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face, but he quickly dismissed it. What could a soon-to-be unemployed 49-year-old engineer possibly do to a rising tech company? Will you be taking some time off? He asked with artificial concern. Actually, I already have something lined up, I replied. I start Monday. Surprise crossed his features. That's fast. Anything interesting? I smiled, taping up the box. Very interesting. A leadership position. I'm quite excited about it. He nodded absently, already mentally moving on to other matters. Well, good luck with that. As I walked out of Dataflow's glass headquarters for the final time, keycards surrendered and personal belongings in hand, I took a moment to look back at the building where I'd spent 15 years of my career. On the top floor, I could see the executive conference room lit up for an evening meeting, likely discussing how to redistribute my responsibilities among younger, less experienced, and significantly cheaper staff. They had no idea that in 72 hours, that same room would be hosting an emergency crisis meeting instead. The weekend was peaceful. I spent Saturday reviewing TechCore's technical architecture, getting familiar with their existing systems. Sunday, I prepared for what would be an interesting Monday morning. My wife Sarah knew something big was happening but trusted me to handle it. After 22 years of marriage, she'd learned to recognize when I had everything under control. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. I dressed carefully in my best navy suit, the one I wore to important client presentations. The TechCore car arrived at 7:30 to take me to their headquarters across town, where I'd start my first day as Chief Technology Officer. The press release goes live at 8 a.m., Richard informed me as I settled into my new corner office with windows overlooking the city. Our communications team is monitoring industry reactions. Should be interesting. The announcement had been crafted carefully over the weekend. TechCore Solutions acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary security platform. Welcomes creator Andrew Collins as Chief Technology Officer. It detailed my background, emphasized my role as sole inventor of the patented technology, and outlined how TechCore would integrate the platform into their product line. Most importantly, it clearly stated that any company currently using technology covered by my patent would need to negotiate licensing agreements with TechCore moving forward. At 8:15, my phone lit up with the first text from Carlos at Dataflow. "Dude, what the hell just happened? Everyone's freaking out here." I smiled, typing back, "Check your personal email. All 5 of you have job offers waiting." Meanwhile, 8 miles away at Dataflow headquarters, Monday morning was not going according to plan. According to Carlos's play-by-play updates throughout the morning, Bradley had arrived at the office to find the company's general counsel and CFO waiting at his door, both looking like they'd seen a ghost. The industry announcement had hit their inboxes simultaneously, setting off immediate alarms throughout the company. By 9:30, what should have been a routine start-of-week meeting had morphed into an emergency crisis session. Board members were calling in remotely, the legal team was frantically reviewing my employment contract, and IT was analyzing every line of code I'd ever written. "They're pulling servers from the data center," Carlos texted. "Someone just wheeled in 3 rack units for the tech team to examine. This is insane." I could picture the scene perfectly. Bradley pacing the conference room, demanding explanations from Patricia and the legal department. The stock market wouldn't open for another hour, but word was already spreading through industry circles. At 10:45, I received an email from Bradley himself. The desperation was practically radiating from my screen. "Andrew, there appears to be a serious misunderstanding. Please call me immediately to discuss this situation." I forwarded it to TechCore's legal team without responding. They replied within minutes. "Perfect. Let him sweat. We're ready for whatever they throw at us." The real show was just beginning. By noon, the industry was buzzing. Dataflow's stock had dropped 12% since market open, while TechCore had gained 8%. 3 technology journals had already requested interviews about the strategic move that was shaking up the enterprise software industry. "How does it feel?" Richard asked, stopping by my office as I reviewed TechCore's development roadmap. "Honestly? Validating," I replied. 15 years of watching others take credit for my work, of being told I should be grateful just to be part of the team. And now, finally, proper recognition. My new assistant appeared at the door. "Mr. Collins, the engineering team is ready for you in the main conference room. Also, Dataflow's CEO has called 8 times in the last hour. Please let him know I'm in meetings all day," I replied calmly. "Our legal team will reach out later this week to discuss licensing options." As I walked toward my first meeting as CTO, my phone buzzed with another update from Carlos. "Emergency board session just started. Bradley looks like he's about to lose it. HR is in full panic mode. PS, my whole team accepts your offer. When can we start? Perfect." I typed back, "Next Monday. Welcome to TechCore." The engineering meeting went better than I'd expected. TechCore had solid people, but they'd been missing the kind of architectural vision that comes from years of building enterprise-scale systems. As I outlined how we'd integrate my security platform with their existing products, I could see the excitement building in the room. "The early integration tests show a 23% improvement in authentication speed," reported Lisa Parker, their lead systems architect. "But we think there's room for even more optimization." "There is," I confirmed. I had several refinements I never shared with Dataflow. After I discovered they were planning to eliminate my position, I saw no reason to give them my best work. By Wednesday, the industry fallout had intensified. 2 major clients had contacted TechCore about switching platforms, concerned about Dataflow's ability to maintain their product without the security technology's creator. Our stock had risen another 4%, while data flows continued sliding. I received a call from Patricia Martinez, the same woman who had slid my severance package across the table just 5 days earlier. "Andrew," she began, her voice carefully professional but with an edge of desperation I hadn't heard before, "I'm calling about the situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding about ownership rights." "I don't think there's any misunderstanding," I replied calmly. "My employment agreement clearly states that intellectual property developed on my own time using my own resources remains mine. The patent documentation confirms exactly that. Bradley was hoping you might consider coming in to discuss options." "Any discussions would need to go through TechCore's legal department now," I responded. "I'm sure they'd be happy to set up a meeting to discuss licensing terms." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. Finally, Patricia sighed. "I'll pass that along." That afternoon, I led my first formal presentation to TechCore's board of directors, outlining our technology roadmap with my security platform at its center. As I stood confidently at the head of the boardroom table, not hidden in the background as I'd been at Dataflow, I caught approving nods from several board members. "The market response has exceeded our projections," Richard told the board. "We're seeing interest from sectors we hadn't even targeted yet." By Friday, just 1 week after walking out of Dataflow for the last time, the full scope of their crisis had become clear. Their stock had fallen 18% from Monday's opening, triggering concerned calls from major investors. Industry analysts were publishing articles with titles like, "Can Dataflow Survive the Patent Crisis?" and "The Costly Mistake of Undervaluing Innovation." Through my contacts in the industry, I learned that Bradley had finally acknowledged the severity of the situation to the board. Dataflow would need to either license my technology from TechCore, likely at rates that would significantly impact their profit margins, or undertake a complete rebuild of their security infrastructure without using any technology covered by my patent. "They've started interviewing for a new development team," Carlos informed me during our Friday check-in. He was finishing his final week at Dataflow before joining my team at TechCore. "Bradley's telling people they can recreate the functionality in 6 months. I couldn't help but laugh. 6 months? The original platform took me 4 years to perfect, and that was with intimate knowledge of the security challenges." "Exactly," Carlos agreed. "Nobody's buying the timeline, especially after your entire team posted resignation letters simultaneously. The institutional knowledge walking out the door is massive." That afternoon, Dataflow's attorneys finally reached out to TechCore to open discussions about potential licensing arrangements. Our legal team, following the strategy we'd developed, responded with terms that were technically fair but strategically painful. 3 times the standard industry licensing rate, plus public acknowledgement of my role as the technology's inventor. "They'll fight the acknowledgement more than the cost," Richard predicted as we reviewed the response in his office. "Bradley's ego won't allow him to admit he pushed out the person who created their core technology." "Then they'll have to rebuild," I replied. "And every day they spend trying to replicate my work is another day we extend our lead in the market." The following Monday morning, exactly 10 days after my dismissal, I led my first meeting with my newly assembled innovation team, which now included Carlos and 3 of the other engineers from Dataflow. Jennifer Hayes would be joining us the following week. "This is how development meetings should work," Carlos commented as we mapped out the next evolution of my security platform. At Dataflow, we spent half our time explaining basic concepts to executives who didn't want to listen. "That's the difference between being valued and being seen as replaceable," I replied. As we wrapped up the productive session, my assistant appeared at the door with news that would change everything. "Mr. Collins, there's been a significant development," my assistant said, holding a printout. "Dataflow's board just announced an emergency leadership change. Bradley Walsh is stepping down effective immediately." The news spread through the industry like wildfire. Within hours, trade publications were reporting that Dataflow's board had lost confidence in Bradley's leadership following the patent oversight that threatened their flagship product. Patricia Martinez was also out, along with the head of legal who had failed to properly secure my intellectual property. I have to admit, I felt a moment of satisfaction. Not vindictive pleasure, but the quiet satisfaction of seeing consequences catch up with poor decisions. That evening, I received an unexpected email from James Morrison, Dataflow's newly appointed interim CEO. Unlike Bradley's increasingly desperate messages from the previous weeks, This one was straightforward and respectful. Mr. Collins, congratulations on your new position. I've been brought in to help Dataflow navigate this situation. I'd like to discuss a reasonable licensing arrangement for your patented technology. We're prepared to acknowledge your contributions publicly and make appropriate amends for previous management's oversights. Would you be available to meet next week? I forwarded the email to Richard with a simple note. Progress. His reply came quickly. Well executed. The board is impressed with your first major win for TechCore. The meeting with Morrison took place the following Thursday at a neutral location downtown. He was older, maybe 60, with the kind of calm demeanor that comes from cleaning up other people's messes for a living. I'll be direct, Morrison said after we sat down. Dataflow made serious mistakes in how they handled your departure and your intellectual property. I'm here to make it right, within reason. I appreciate the honesty, I replied. What did you have in mind? A 5-year licensing agreement. We pay TechCore standard industry rates for the use of your security platform, plus a one-time payment acknowledging your role in developing the technology. It was a fair offer, not the punitive terms our lawyers had initially proposed, but reasonable compensation that would allow Dataflow to continue operating while recognizing my contribution. And the public acknowledgement? I asked. Morrison nodded. Full credit in our product documentation, press releases, and marketing materials. Your name associated with the SecureLink platform where it belongs. We shook hands on the deal. Sometimes the best revenge is simply getting what you deserved in the first place. Over the following months, life settled into a new rhythm. TechCore was thriving with the enhanced security platform, and we'd landed 3 major contracts that Dataflow had been pursuing for years. My team was working on innovations I'd only dreamed about when I was constrained by Dataflow's limited vision. The industry took notice. 6 months after my departure from Dataflow, I was invited to deliver the keynote address at the National Technology Innovation Conference. The same conference where, just a year earlier, I'd sat in the back while Bradley presented his company's innovations. Ladies and gentlemen, the conference organizer announced to the packed auditorium, please welcome Andrew Collins, Chief Technology Officer at TechCore Solutions and creator of the SecureLink authentication platform that has revolutionized enterprise security. The applause was substantial as I approached the podium. My presentation focused on the technical evolution of enterprise security, but I also touched on broader themes of innovation and recognition in the technology sector. Innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum, I told the audience. It comes from real people solving real problems. When companies properly value and protect their innovators, everyone benefits. The company, the industry, and ultimately the customers we serve. Afterward, during the reception, several experienced engineers approached me. One guy, probably in his early 50s, said, "Your story changed how I think about protecting my work. I've started keeping detailed logs of everything I develop on my own time." "Smart approach," I replied. "Your innovations deserve protection." Another engineer, a woman in her 40s, added, "It's inspiring to see someone our age not just survive corporate politics, but actually win." A year to the day after being told to clean out my desk, I sat in my spacious office at TechCore, reviewing our annual innovation report. Under my leadership, the company had released 6 new products built around my security platform, capturing significant market share from Dataflow and other competitors. Richard knocked on my door, carrying a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Anniversary celebration," he announced, setting the glasses on my desk. The board asked me to share some news personally before the public announcement. TechCore has officially achieved the highest market valuation in company history. I smiled, feeling genuine satisfaction rather than vindictive triumph. That's what happens when you invest in innovation properly. As Richard poured the champagne, my assistant delivered an elegant envelope. Inside was an invitation to speak at the Technology Leadership Summit in Seattle. The topic, Building Value Through Innovation, Lessons from the Front Lines. "You've become quite the industry figure," Richard observed. "The story of the engineer who turned a wrongful termination into industry transformation has become a case study at several business schools." Morrison had kept his word. Dataflow had not only acknowledged my contribution publicly, but had also implemented new policies protecting their innovators. Their new approach to intellectual property and inventor recognition was reportedly modeled after the program I'd established at TechCore. "It was never about revenge," I said, raising my glass. "It was about getting the recognition that innovation deserves, about showing the industry that experience and expertise have real value." "To proper recognition," Richard agreed. clinking his glass against mine. As the afternoon sun streamed through my office windows, I reflected on the journey. At 50, I had finally achieved something that had eluded me for years, not just professional success, but genuine acknowledgement of my contributions to the industry. My name was permanently associated with the security platform that had changed enterprise authentication. After 15 years of being one of our talented engineering resources, I was finally Andrew Collins, the innovator. That's where my story really begins.